Hello everybody, my name is Chrono and welcome to my channel. I just got back from the Dallas Bandai Card Fest. I played in the last chance qualifier for One Piece at that event, ended up 8-1 in that event, and so I qualified for the national tournament, played in that, and after 10 rounds I ended 7-3, and so I believe I got a top 64 or 51st place overall. I used the same deck for both tournaments, and so I just wanted to talk about my deck profile as well as some of my matchups during both of those events, and then just some of my experiences at the weekend event. I just thought it'd be a fun video to make. I've never really made a post-tournament video before, but I've also never really made One Piece content until this last week, so we're just going to go ahead and jump right into the card by card for the deck list here, starting with the leader. It is, of course, Blue Yellow Nami. This has been my favorite leader to play for this set. She is, of course, a blue yellow leader with 4 life and 2 effects on her. The first being a card draw effect. You get to draw a card as long as you have 7 cards or less in your hand after a life is removed from either player's life pile. And so this synergizes with a ton of effects in your own deck. Whenever you take your own life, as long as you end with 7 or less in your hand, you just get to draw an extra card. Ends up being a draw 2 per turn for most of your turns. And her second effect is a defensive one. As long as she has a Dawn attached, when your opponent attacks, you can discard any old card from your hand and you just become a 7k power leader for the rest of the turn. Well, technically you become a plus 2k to your base power, but ends at 7 as long as no other weird things lower or raise your power. So that is the leader, and then we'll just jump into the main 50 here. Part of the reason I like Blue Yellow Nami so much is that you can do a lot with her. She lends herself to a bunch of different archetypes because she has 2 highly synergistic effects. I decided, though, to go with a Wano package in my deck list, and so we'll go ahead and start with that half of the deck with the Searcher. We do have the yellow Yamato Searcher from the Yamato starter deck. Basically, this just looks at the top 5 and grabs any Land of Wano card with a cost of 2 or greater as the on play. And then if you give it 2 Dawn, it gets 3k bonus power to become a 5k total power character. So you can swing with it a little bit easier than you can with other Searchers. And the reason why we like the Wano package is because it was already playing a 2k that most Nami lists are going to be playing, which is, of course, the Kazuki Hiyori. I'm playing it as a 4 of. This is a 2-cost on play. You get to take one of your top or bottom life and then replace it with another card from your hand. So this lets you stack some triggers, but also procs your Nami leader effect, even if you had 8 cards in hand when you played this from hand. And so it's just a good way to make sure you're getting that extra draw, but also stacking your life. Your opponent might be a little bit more wary of swinging into you because they don't know what kind of trigger they're going to be having to deal with. And then, of course, for our next 102k, we're going to be playing the other Kazuki Hiyori. This one's a little bit less useful than her counterpart here, but it does still have some play in the deck outside of just being a 2k, unlike the other 2ks that are in the Wano part of the game, which is a 4-cost 5k character that triggers, but only if you're a Land of Wano leader. So for us, he'd just be a vanilla 4-mana 5k. And then Yamato Rusher for 5 Dawn, and then it's a 4k power character. You have to take a life when you play it, though, and being a 5k or 4k 5-cost Rusher really just isn't that strong. I used to play it in the deck, but it just never really came up. I found myself playing it maybe 1 in 200 games, and only out of pure necessity because I had literally nothing else to play. Instead, Kazuki Hiyori here just buffs a Land of Wano power character by 1,000, which doesn't sound very good because you have to pay 2 Dawn for it, and trigger just plays itself. You're not a Land of Wano leader, so you can't boost yourself with it like Yamato could if you were playing it in that list. But it does buff the Kazuki Odin card, which we'll get to in a second, which does give it a little bit more play. Next up, though, we'll just go into what I consider to be one of the main reasons to play the Land of Wano package, which is Momonosuke here. It is a 5-cost 6k blocker that on play takes one of your Land of Wano characters and puts it into your life. So it is both a heal and then a blocker. It just makes you extremely resilient to getting aggroed down. Like Rayleigh hates to play into this, Zoro hates to play into this, and other Nami decks will be focused on the 7 Warlords set just because it does have the Kuma in it, which does a similar thing, but the Kuma costs 6, whereas this costs 5, and so I do believe that with the addition of the Kazuki Odin card, this just synergizes much better, and I will show you why in a second. But next up, we'll go ahead and look at the Kikunojo, which of course, again, we are playing as a 4 of. This is one of the best triggers in our deck, just puts a 6k body into play as soon as your opponent has 3 or less life left, and you can trigger it. And additionally has a useful on KO, healing you 1. This is just a very annoying 6k attacker that your opponent just won't really want to deal with. Especially since bottom decking and bouncing effects are just not very popular in the current meta. Most decks are swinging over things, and so a lot of times they just end up ignoring the Kikunojo because they don't want you to heal. And I mean, that's fair enough. We have enough healing as it is. If we healed even more, it would just be very annoying to ever finish off the game, which once this next card comes out, they will need to do, and that is the Kazuki Odin. Kazuki Odin, very strong card, also land Wano, so of course searchable, but once this guy hits the field, it is a game changer. Suddenly, you can start to bounce back your on-play effects, like your Yamato get extra searches, like your Hioris get 2Ks back in hand, and then if you don't have anything in play, sometimes you just play this 2K Hiyori to give it plus 1k power, and then you can bounce it back and be a 2k later. So that is the use for this card. But additionally, he does defend himself from removal effects, and that's a very big deal because previously this deck would fold to removal-based decks like Lucci, like Enel, things like that, would just pop our creatures every single turn and we would never be able to stick a body. But Odin is a game changer in that it is nearly impossible to get him off the board with effects once he's there. The only really efficient way to get rid of him is to swing over, and since Nami has so many cards in hand, a lot of times that's not really that efficient either. A lot of times we are just able to counter out and keep him around. And so Odin as a double attacking character just really is quite a consistent threat that your opponent will need to close the game out against you before he starts to accumulate too much value. That is the end of the Wano package, though. So we've got about 24 cards in total here, including 4 searchers, so 20 things that can be searched by it. Moving along, we'll get to the other 26, starting with our useful on-play, non-Wano characters. We got the Zeus here. And so Zeus is, of course, a yellow staple. This is a 2k that on play, you take your own life, either top or bottom, and you can pop a 5 cost on your opponent's field. Very useful to get rid of a ton of different characters in the current meta, especially against green decks. But, I mean, it feels like everybody has a 5-cost character that's very important these days. And so this just efficiently gets rid of it, procs your leader effect so you still get to draw, and then you can bounce it back with Kazuki Odin to play it again or just have it in hand. And the loss of life really isn't that big of a downside because we are able to so easily heal. A lot of times you just end up playing this for tempo after your opponent's 5-Dawn turn, and then you'll just heal up later in the game, and it doesn't really matter that you've spent a life to do so. Next up, we do have the puddings. And so, of course, pudding needs no introduction. This is the, if you have a big hand, you have to shuffle it back in and suddenly just draw 5. It's great for messing with your opponent's stacking, so it's very important against Blue-Purple Luffy or like Kuzan. Anybody who's drawing a ton of cards, this is a great way to set them back to 5. Oh, Bonnie as well, very important in that matchup, and that's why I'm playing it as a 4 of. It's not searchable. We do draw a lot, but I want to make sure I'm at least seeing 1 per game against those kinds of decks. So I do have it as a 4 of, and in the times that you don't need it, it's still a 1k counter, so it's not too shabby. Next up, of course, we do have our 4 Nojikos. This is a Nami-only card that for 2 cost will bounce a 5-cost character back into the opponent's hand. So again, we're just hating on 5s. We're just pulling the tempo back into our favor very cheaply, and then the card will stick to the board, so we can bounce it back later with Kazuki Odin for an additional use or just to use it as counterpower. Very good card, very strong right now, and of course, it's non-KO removal, so cards that can't be KO'd, you know, you can still Nojiko them. And then we've also got the Nefertari Vivi card. I really like this card. Just refills 2 into your hand, and then again, you can bounce it back later. But you have to have 5 cards or less for the effect to resolve. So when you played it, it had to be the 6th card in your hand to get to use it. A lot of times we'll proc this though on turn 2 when going first. You just play it, you go to 7, and you swing your 5. If they take the life, you get to go to 8. A lot of aggro decks will just be taking that life, and having 8 cards gives you a ton of defense so that you cannot dip too low on life too early, and it'll just let you have a very comfortable mid game. I really like this card, though, for recovery in the late game situations, as well as sometimes it's just a filler card with, let's say, on your 7 on turn, you play it with the 4 cost 6K. And then lastly, I just have a singular copy of Kuma. Again, I don't miss this card too much just because we are playing 4 Momonosuke, which fulfills the same purpose. That's not to say Kuma's not a good card. It's just not as good, in my opinion, in this current deck list. And so sometimes, you just need the heal, though, and then Zoro hates swinging into this guy because he heals you again, so he can just be a consistent attacker, much like Kikunojo is. Basically, I'm considering this a 5th copy of Momonosuke in this current build. Next up, we've got our odds and ends, and we'll start with the red rocks. It's generic blue removal for 6 cost, really needs no introduction. You just point at a big scary guy like a 10 cost Blackbeard or Shanks or Dofi, some kind of 10 cost character you wouldn't otherwise be able to out and get rid of it. So it's the panic button. If for whatever reason the 10 cost characters became more relevant in the meta, I'd play more, but I just need to see 1 per game, and at 2 I usually am able to do so. And so it does have a useful trigger too. You could stack it with Hiyori, but 4 cost is a lot less valuable than the 5 cost removal, so getting the trigger is usually not that important. Next up, we've got 2 Slave Arrows. Now, originally I was using Slave Arrow as a anti-Zoro tool, because if your Zoro opponent swings into your character and you bounce it back with Slave Arrow, then of course the battle does not occur and they cannot use their effect to restand. But then I realized Slave Arrow is actually just a very good value tool. You get back your useful on plays, which we've already gone over. You can get back a Zeus, get back a Nojiko, get back a Vivi, any kind of useful on play. Even sometimes you can bounce back a Momonosuke and get another heal out of him on the next turn. And it gives you plus 4K after you do so to whatever was being battled. So very good to get your counter power super high without having to go super low on cards. I do just have it as a 2 of because, again, we really only need like 1 per game usually, but I do want to see it. So I do have it as a 2 of here. And then we've got 2 of the Martial D Teaches. A lot of Nami lists, they play it at 4 of, and I do understand that it's very good for the leader in the matchups that it's good in, but those matchups feel few and far between in this meta. The only one that's really prevalent that I feel that this card is absolutely necessary for is the blue-purple Luffy matchup. In that matchup, getting the bigger swings early is very important and very useful, so this card is great in that. But a lot of other ones, like let's say Zoro, let's say Rayleigh, green-purple Luffy, this card really just doesn't do that much into them. And so I want a chance to see it in the one matchup that I'm expecting to see that it's really good in, but I don't want it to flood my hand with a bunch of them in all of these other matchups that it's just not doing that much in. So I do have it as just a 2 of, even though it's not searchable. It's a good card when it's good, but sometimes, and most of the time, it's just not particularly useful. And then lastly, of course, we've got our 3 Eustace Captain Kids. Now, normally, again, in most matchups, you don't need this guy at all. But against blue-purple Luffy is absolutely necessary. You see 1 of these if you're going to close the game out in a reasonable fashion against an average to good hand from them. You can still win the game if they have a bad hand, but he is necessary otherwise, just because he is 8 cost, he does dodge Mihawk, he is 9k, it is difficult for them to swing into him and develop more creatures. And so then if you can go Odin on 7 and then Kid on 9, and then they play their guys and swing with whatever they have on board into Kid, you can just give them a couple cards and keep it on board. The next turn you can go 10 with Kid, 14 with Odin, 14 with Odin, and a lot of times that's enough to close out the game. So just threatening that makes them not able to develop too much. Instead, a lot of times they'll have to block her up and hold up Dawn for counter events, and then once that happens, you can start to really pressure their hand, and they'll just start to run out of resources even with the double draw. So that's why he's just super important for that one matchup. The other one that surprisingly he came in clutch in was against any yellow matchups that, like, let's say, there was a Katakuri I actually played against, but Bishop being able to burn life sometimes was very nice to not have to activate triggers. So there was some other use I got out of him, but a lot of other matchups, you're just not using this guy at all. Rayleigh, Zoro, Bonnie, like, there's just not a real reason to play him. So he is a, he's a 3-of though, so we can see him most of the time just because, unlike the Teach, who's also good in the blue-purple matchup, you absolutely do need to see this guy, so I am playing it as a 1 extra copy. But that is the 50 cards, and so from here, we'll just go ahead and jump right on into the matchups that we had. But before I do, I guess we'll just spread out all of the cards so that you can fully see every single one in here. I suppose I should have done this before. Oh no, it's going to take up all of my table space. Well, like I said, I am not much of a card game video maker, so I didn't think about this beforehand, but there they all are. Okay, everybody take a photo, but I am going to go ahead and get into the matchups now. Okay, so just in case it wasn't clear from the previous in-person video, here's just a screenshot of the deck list so you can see all of the cards. But getting into the matchups now, my first round in the LCQ was against Bonnie. To no one's surprise, this matchup is extremely grindy due to both of our leaders having some great defensive abilities, and in order to actually win, it is imperative that we gain early tempo to allow us to get to a board state with 2 Odins on the board, and then once that happens, we can leverage the multiple swings they provide to overwhelm the Bonnie's defenses. I managed to do so by removing his early characters with Zeus and Nojiko. Then once I had the Odins, they are able to bounce my Searcher Yamatos multiple times a turn, and the Bonnie simply can't keep up with all of those swings and all of the card advantage we're getting off the Yamato searches, and it granted us the win in the end. Next up, I was playing against a Smoker player. He won the die roll and chose first. Just like with Bonnie though, we do have a lot of good answers to the Smoker's plays in our Nojiko and Zeus, so of course that's what I mulliganed for, but I didn't find them this time in that matchup. Well, it was fine though, right up until I made a huge mistake during the mid-game and I attacked one of his rested Smokers with a 7k attack, only to have him inform me that it was an 8k character due to his leader's effect. I put myself way behind due to that play, and it got to the point where he had multiple 6k and 7k bodies on the board, so he decides to go for game with a Hody Jones play. He attacked with everything that he had, all of his Dawn, he attached it all of his characters swung. It got to the point I had no life left, no cards in hand, no blockers in play, but his only attacker left was a 6k Bonnie blocker, and he had no Dawn to attach to her. Still, he decides to go ahead and attack, and at that point I informed him that I was a 7k leader due to my effect's activation. He was surprised by that, but it did allow me to go ahead and go for the win on my next turn, as he only had 2 life left and 2 cards in hand, so I was able to win off of the back of my opponent's misplay. I probably could have got it if I didn't misplay myself, but I mean, sometimes that's just how it goes in big tournaments like that. For my third round, I sat down against a Shanks. This is yet another matchup where Zeus and Nojiko are all-stars, and the reason is because of their 4-cost 6k blocker Shankses. If you allowed them to stack up multiple 4-cost 6k blocker Shanks, you're just going to be in for a rough time because they're going to buy so much time for them to play their 8-cost Rayleighs and 10-cost Shanks, and once they stack those up, the game's usually over. Unfortunately for my opponent, my Zeuses were there this time, and so not only that, I also had a Red Rock for the first 10-cost Shanks that he played, and from there, my Odin just cleaned house. So sometimes this deck just has all the answers some games, but my opponent was a good sport about it, and we wished each other good luck on the rest, and I went for my next round. Fourth round, I finally found the first UP Luffy of my tournament run. Now, this is the matchup I was dreading, as it's the only one I consider to be truly a losing matchup for our deck, whether we go first or second. A lot of things need to go right for us to win compared to other matchups, and instead of being able to drag out the game with healing, instead we have to make a lot of gambles. In this game one, such occurrence happened. Basically, our opponent took our first 6k swing and held up 2 Dawn with 7 Dawn total, So he was obviously signaling he has a Thunder Bagua in hand, so we shouldn't be swinging into him. But I need to take cards out of his hand. I need to put on pressure, so I decide to play a pudding before taking 2 6K swings at him. After the pudding, and he already had a 5-card hand, to be clear, so I wasn't getting any cards out of his hand with the pudding. I was just trying to get the Bagua out of his hand. So after I take those 2 6K swings, I'm just praying he doesn't get another Bagua, and in this case, he didn't have it. So we chipped down a couple cards there, and by the next turn, he's so low on cards, and he didn't get his search because he didn't get to 8 Dawn, that basically I was able to just go 6K with lead, 6K with an Okiku, 6K with a pudding, 6K with the Yamato Searcher I had on the board, and then 6K with another Yamato Searcher I had on the board. And it was actually enough to just close out the game before he was even able to get a leader effect off. It was crazy lucky for me, but hey, I'll take it for that one. In the next round, I actually faced a Lucci player, very surprising for this meta, and unfortunately for him, a very good matchup for Nami. This is yet another matchup that Odin completely fixed for our deck, and while there was a minor scare when he was able to play a 10-cost Kuzan and I didn't have a red rock from it, I was already so far ahead on board that it really didn't end up mattering, and I was able to comfortably close out the game. In round 6, though, I was unfortunately paired into one of my friends who we had actually come to Dallas with. He was on GP Luffy, and we'd actually played like several times before this tournament, so we both pretty much knew what each other was playing in each of our decks. This time, though, I did win the die roll, and I opened a pretty good hand, including a timely pudding to put him back from 8 to 5 cards, and it allowed me to clinch out that game. Round 7 came up next, and I was starting to feel the pressure because, well, I was 6-0 at the time, and you only need 7 to get at LCQ, so, my hopes were high. Just to sit against another purple Luffy. Still, though, or blue-purple Luffy, I'm sorry. Still, though, I had won against the last one, and so I was feeling, I could do this. I take my first turn where I get to attack him. I swing a 6K into his lead. He takes, and he ramps off his first life. Well, I knew it was going to be rough going from there, but I played it out, and, well, it really just didn't end up feeling close from there. He got to get to his leader effect super early, and he was never in danger of dying, and so I just, I lost that one, and I had to hope that the next 2 rounds wouldn't go as poorly. I could feel, though, that lingering dread in the back of my head that possibly my 6-3 finish that I usually do was creeping up on me. Still, the One Piece gods did bless me as my next round opponent ended up being an Enel. A lot of decks don't want to play into Enel this format, and so they would like to dodge them, but Nami wants to see them. Give me all the Enels was what I was thinking, and so they just don't have an answer to Odin. Odin puts on this crazy amount of pressure, and they can't remove it, and additionally, Enel is super susceptible to a pudding, and so we just have all the tools for this matchup. I have both for this game that I'm playing, and the game is over in a flash. Like, by turn 6, it's over. Still, my opponent, he's still X2 at this point, so he could win his next round and get into the event, so I do wish him good luck, and I go to my next round. My last round was a bit uneventful. It was against another GP Luffy, but to be honest, we were both already in the event, and so it really didn't feel like my opponent's head was quite in the game. I won it without too much trouble, and we shook hands and congratulated each other on making it into Nats. Afterward, though, I did go out and seek out that Enel player. I just wanted to know how he did, and he said, hey, he made it as well, and so we congratulated each other, and also the Shanks player and the UP Luffy player that I had beat earlier in that LCQ, they both found me and said, oh, hey, we also went 8-1. You were our one loss, and we all, it was a happy time for everybody who did make it, and even some of my friends from locals also made it, and so we just wished each other well, and we were going to see each other in the main event in high spirits. Well, Nats started on the next day, and my first round was against yet another green-purple Luffy. Now, I was a little bit nervous because I knew the competition would be a bit stiffer than the LCQ, but to be honest, this was a matchup I was comfortable with, and so I was thankful to see it. Fortunately, I also opened one of those hands that sort of just plays itself. Yamato on 1, Vivi on 2, Okiku on 3, Nojiko plus a pudding on 4, and I even got an Okiku out of life. The game was smooth sailing from there. Then in round 2, I faced yet another GP Luffy. Well, more of the same for me, and I cruised through that one similarly to the first one. Won the die roll, had cards on curve. In fact, I believe he didn't even have the stage, so our Zeuses and Nojikos were able to get rid of his Sanji puddings in a timely fashion. Now, third round, I ran into a leader I really wasn't expecting to find, and that was Yellow Katakuri. Fortunately, though, our deck does have tools equipped to beat it, and so things like their Perospero and their Kikunojos are just easily dispatched by our Nojiko, and we actually ended up drawing into not just one, not just two, but all 3 of our kids. And so we just burned their life all the way down to 0, even though they had 2 Big Mom heals. I mean, it was kind of a bit of a high roll, but Odin would have probably done a similar job, so it was just one of those crazy things where Kid actually came through. Fourth round, I faced my first green Zoro, surprisingly my first, for that whole weekend. Like, I didn't play one in LCQ either. This, unfortunately, is a die roll dependent matchup, though, where I get a significant boost if I get to go second, and a similar disadvantage if I have to go first. Fortunately, though, I did win the die roll, and was able to pressure the Zoro's life before he could start chaining 8-cost Mihawks, which allowed me to close the game out without too much trouble. In the 5th round, I faced off against a Blackbeard, and this is a matchup that can get super scary since we do have a lot of on-plays that we want to use, but our deck also has some tools to defeat it. And so the early game was a bit uneventful, and I was able to drop my first Odin on curve. My opponent searches with his field spell and is able to find his 4-cost Black Hole spell, and that unfortunately turns off my Odin's effects and allows him to be eliminated. Not a big deal, though. I have another one for turn 9, or my 9-Dawn turn, I should say, and so I drop it knowing that he full well probably has a 10-cost Blackbeard, but he hasn't searched any this whole game, so not only is there a chance he doesn't have one, but even if he does have the first one, there's a good chance he doesn't have the second one, because a lot of Teach decks right now are only playing 3 of the 10-drop right now, just because they only usually need to play about 2 a game, and they can search it very easily. My opponent's turn starts, and he uses his stage and searches out, who would have guessed, a 10-drop Blackbeard, drops it down, no big deal, freezes my Odin, pressures my life a little bit, but we go ahead and take our turn. The reason I'm not so worried about it is because I have a Red Rock in hand. So I Red Rock the Teach, swing 9 into his lead, he goes down to 1 life, and takes his turn. He uses his stage again and finds another Blackbeard. So drops that on the board, freezes my guy again, pressures me a little bit more. Still, I am able to top deck my Red Rock. So he had a bit of good luck, I got a bit of good luck. I Red Rock his 10 cost, go for 9k into his lead, put him down to 0 life. He's got like 4 cards left in hand. Feeling pretty good because as long as he doesn't see the 3rd Teach, we are probably going to be able to close it out, and I am nowhere close to being dead. So he draws his card and searches, finds another 10 cost Teach. And from there, the game just goes south. I don't have a 3rd Red Rock, and I just find myself having to scoop it up before too long. 6th round, I face another Bonnie, and while I open pretty well and find myself on the board state that I want with 2 7-cost Odins, he's able to build a board with multiple of the 8-drop Mihawks as well as a couple of littler blockers. And so I'm slowly getting pressured out of the game, and I even end up losing one of my Odins to a big swing from him. The game's not looking too great for me. I'm chipping as well as I can, but I'm getting pushed out. My opponent, feeling confident, makes a big mistake, though. He swings with one of his 2 remaining Mihawks that he has in play into my Odin, a big 15k swing. He's only leaving 1 Dawn remaining up. It takes my whole hand minus 1 card to counter it, but that last card is a Zeus. The board state is as follows. I have an Odin, I have a Kikunojo, I have my leader. My opponent has a Uroge and a standing Mihawk blocker, as well as 4 cards in hand, the 1 Dawn up, and 1 life remaining. The turn goes something like this. I play my Zeus, pop his Uroge, swing 9 with my Odin, he rests my Kikunojo. He takes the damage. I go 9 with my leader. He gives me the Mihawk blocker. I restand my 7 drop by bouncing my Kikunojo back to hand, swing 9 to lead, and it's enough to close the game. It was a real nail biter, but we were able to close that one out. In the 7th round, I play against another UP Luffy, and you know, it's a rough matchup, but he doesn't have the ramp on turn 2. I swing a 6k at him while he's at 7 Dawn, and he plays a Thunder Bagua, and he's expecting to get his ramp, but I inform him he still has 3 life left, so he will not. I'm starting to feel confident. My opponent's making misplays, and things are going right. I'm feeling like this is one that I could win. But there's one problem. While I do have an Odin ready to play, I have no Kid. I play the Odin, but I don't draw into the Kid on my next turn, so I can't burn his last life, and I just have to swing big with Odin. But he still has plenty of events to play, so he gives me a Gum Gum Giant, he gives me a Gear 2 and a couple of 2Ks out of his hand. He's still chilling on 1 life. On his next turn, he's able to go Sanji plus a Rosinante. Rosinante restands a couple Dawn. He's got plenty of cards in hand. He's still sitting on like 5 or 6. He's starting to wall up, and I am feeling this game slipping away. So I make a push again with the Odin, and I get some of his hand out, but he has another Gum Gum Giant. He's got another Thunder Bagua, and I'm still not able to take his last life. His next turn, he's walling up with double Nami. It's getting to critical time. He is turning the corner on me. I'm running out of cards to defend my Odin with as well, because he's starting to pressure my life, but also pressure my Odin. Well, I've got one more chance. I play my Zeus, I pop the Nami, I play my Nojiko, bounce the Nami, I swing 11-11, he takes the first one, and counters out of the second one. And then I'm not able to defend my Odin anymore. And so the game is over. Well, sometimes they just got it like that, and, well, there's not much more you could do. 8th round, though, I'm still alive in the bracket, and I'm playing against another Bonnie. And this time I open crazy. I've got tons of searchers. I've got a Kikunojo that comes out of my life. Odin hits the board on 7. I'm feeling real good. Meanwhile, my opponent, all of his units are getting removed. He does not have any Mihawks either. Mihawk is super important for this matchup for them, and without them, this game goes my way real fast. The Bonnie is still a strong defensive leader, and so he's able to make it last a while, but it's very clear that I just have the game from turn 4 onward. And so, in the 9th round, I play against a green Zoro. Now, this time I do lose the die roll. Well, I have to take a big risk because it's my last life in the tournament, and if I lose this one, I'm not making top cut. And I mulligan a pretty middling opening hand. I'm trying for better. And I open absolutely no counterpower. I've got 3 kids, a Red Rock, and Yamato Searcher. Well, consequently, I end up losing a lot of life early just because I can't defend my leader, nor can I defend my character cards, so they're all getting removed as I play them. The game's not over quite yet, though. I do manage to heal myself a bit with a Momonosuke I get out of my deck with a search, and I even managed to find time to stick an Odin on the board. But this is where I make another huge mistake in my tournament run. It ends up costing me the game as well as my tournament life. My opponent swings 12 into my Odin with 3 Dawn up, and so I know he has the restand event. I have a Momo blocker and a Slave Arrow in hand, as well as 5k total worth of counterpower. Of just, 2ks and 1ks. I decide to give him my 2 2ks and my 1k counter, so I'm out of counter in hand. But I save the Odin. He restands with the event and goes again into the Odin. I decide to block and use my Slave Arrow to bounce my Momo back to hand. My opponent restands his leader. I try to tell him he can't, because his leader's battle with my Momo did not actually resolve. My opponent says, actually I am able to restand my leader, because as long as Zoro has battled this turn, he is able to do so. I read the card again and realize he's right, and, well, shoot. That means that he does get to restand and swing into my leader, and I have to go down to 1 life. Now, if I had known that this was the way that that card worked, I would not have played that Slave Arrow. I would just give the block, because now I'm sitting with 0 counter power in hand, no Slave Arrow, and I even had another Momonosuke blocker already in hand prior to, so I really didn't need 2 of them. Still, I try to wall up as best I can. I play another Yamato Searcher so I can stick it in life, swing with my Odin. I have to bounce the Momo so that I can pressure his life to try to go for game on my next turn. But my opponent knows I have no counter power in hand, so he just goes for game on his next turn, and I'm out of there. It's over for me. Not only that, by the way, the Yamato Searchers that I did found me no counter power. I got a couple of bricks out of my deck, but, well, what can you do? Sometimes that's just how it goes. And so I do play my last round. I'm out of contention for top cut, but I still want to, try to do as well as I can. So I play the last round, and it's against a red-green smoker. Now, it was a close game, and at one point, he even had 4 Mihawks on the board. Grim sounding, I know, but he has 0 life left and 0 cards in hand by the time that this board state happens. And I have 1 Odin in play, and so I'm able to just swing 8s, and I kill all of his Mihawks. Well, okay, I kill 3 of his Mihawks with 8k Odin, 8k Leader, and then I just wall up. And, well, my opponent's not able to kill me, and then I kill him on the turn after that. So, that's basically how my tournament went. I ended up at 7-3, and I got my prizing. Top cut happened the next day, and who should end up winning but the green Zoro that I lost to in my round 9. Not only that, but the blue-purple Luffy that I lost against earlier in that same event gets 3rd place. Well, still, I'm happy with the way that the deck performed, and I'm still surprised that there's so little representation for this leader. If you made it all the way through this vid, thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments if there's any other OPTCG related content that you'd like to see, or any recommendations you have to improve any of my videos. I have been thinking about doing some deck profiles for PRB as well as OP13 for some of the leaders that I feel have a good chance in the meta, but just aren't really being looked at because they weren't represented in Japan's meta. Now, those ones will be probably shorter than this one or the last one that I did, just because I'll be trying to copy the 10-minute testing that MPT usually does, that format, so they should be closer to around like 12 minutes or so. Well, that's all for now, though, and thanks for watching.